Hello and welcome to Desktop Deployment. My name's Dave, and this is the second episode of the Dominion series. So in the last video, link at the top, we kicked off the series by painting a unit of mighty Stormcast Eternal Vindicators. Which means we probably should do a unit from the villains of the box set, the Kruleboyz. So I've decided on the Gutrippaz. Before I get started, just a quick reminder that if you enjoy this video, please remember to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and please feel free to share the video with your friends. Okay, so let's get started. As usual, I clip the parts, clean the mould lines and glue the models together. If you've seen any of my other build and paint videos, you'll probably have guessed that I will be building and painting the bases separate to the models. The models have little pegs so I can slot them onto the base that they come with, which I do not glue in place so that the models can be easily removed later on. For the bases, I'm going to be recycling some old bases that I had lying around. For the Kruleboyz, I'm going to go with a swamp style base. I start off by building up the bases using layers of cork. I then glue on small stones and a few skulls. Next I give the base a good coat of texture paint, making sure that the stones and the skulls are poking through. After the texture paint is fully dried, I super glue on a few grass tufts and plastic plants. Then I crack out the airbrush, give the bases and the models a black undercoat, followed by a zenithal highlight using a white acrylic ink. Next I mix up a brown with a purple to get a really dark, wet mud colour. I also mix a slightly lighter brown, which I'll use for the higher up, drier mud areas, and start applying it to the base. As the brown paint is drying, I apply a green wash followed by a green ink to the plants. I then paint the rocks grey and the skulls with a sandy ivory colour. Once finished with that, I add a moss coloured enamel paint to the base to add that lovely slimy effect. And after all of that is dry, I give the whole base a brown wash. Once the wash is dried, I dry brush the rocks and the skulls with the sandy ivory colour I originally used to paint the skulls, and then give the rims a coat of black paint. Okay, so moving on to the models. I start with doing the eyes of the Gutrippaz that you can actually see the eyes on. For this I start by painting the eye area with a dark purple colour. I then paint the eye with a dark red, followed by a red, and then a touch of orange. If I happen to go over the edges of the eyes, I can easily correct this using the purple paint. Next I paint all of the shadowed areas of the skin and all of the areas where the skin connects with another object, like armour for example, and all of the recess areas in the skin, like in between the muscles, with the same dark purple that I used for the eye area. I then start to paint the skin with a dark green, building up in layers using lighter and lighter shades of green until I'm doing the highlights with a very bright green. When doing this, I tend to keep the very deepest recesses and the shadowed areas purple until I've finished the second to last brightest green, and then I go back over those areas with the first green that I used. This really helps me as it means I have a visual reminder and a map of where the dark areas should be. Whilst it might not look like it, due to the magic of editing software, the skin is actually the bit that took me the longest on these models. I think it really helps to make the rest of the model look good if you spend a bit more time on the face and the skin compared to the other areas, as this is naturally where your eye goes to first. Next up, I paint all of the leather straps with a dark brown, and all of the leather armour with a lighter brown. After the leather is done, I paint the shields with a dark red, and whilst that is drying, all of the metal with a silver. I then go back to the leather armour and paint the stitches with the same brown that I used for the straps. I also use the same brown for the wood of the spear. With the dark red on the shield dry, I start to paint with a lighter red. When doing this, I try to leave the recessed areas as the dark red. I then do a highlight layer on the main features of the face on the shield with an orange. That will really make it pop. I move on to paint the teeth, both on the face and on the shield, with the same ivory colour that we used to paint the skulls on the bases, before painting the eyes on the shield with an orange and then a yellow. For the champion of the unit, I paint parts of the headdress gold, and the hair with a dark purple, highlighting with a light purple. Once the teeth are dry, I give them and the leather armour, and the wood, and all of the metal a brown wash. I then give the leather straps a purple wash. Jumping back to the bases, I give them a layer of water effect mixed with brown wash over the whole base, leaving out the rocks, skulls, plants and rims. As you might have guessed, this will make the base look wet. For any areas where I want it to look like a pool of water, I go back with further layers once the previous layer has dried. As the water effect is drying on the bases, I go back to the models to add some rust to that metal. I can't imagine these swamp-dwelling gribblies would be taking good care of their equipment now, can you? To do this, I apply Citadel's Typhus Corrosion to the metal parts of the model. Note that I don't do it to all of the metal, and on some parts I may even put just a few patches. After that's dried, I dry brush over the top of it with an orange, followed by a light dry brush of silver. With the silver, I try to brush mainly where the metal would be worn, like along the sharp edge of the blade for example. Lastly, before the bases are united with their models, I dab some brown pigment on the highest areas to make them look drier. I do this very sparingly. I then remove the models from their temporary bases and cut off the pegs. I then make sure that the areas where the pegs used to be are nice and smooth. You may notice that a few of the models do have basing materials attached to a foot. For these, I painted them using the same paints that I used for the bases. I then glue the models to the bases before giving them a satin varnish. You're probably thinking, whoa, wait a minute, did you just say satin? But Dave, all the other models I've seen you paint, you've used matte varnish. What gives? Well, I want to give the appearance of the models being in a moist, humid environment, so a satin finish on the model helps with this. Also, as far as the base is concerned, I don't think matte water would work. The satin varnish over the water effect, once dry, will make it look like there's a murky film or layer on top of the water, which I think fits in quite well with the theme of the model. And here we have them, a unit of Kruleboyz Gutrippaz, ready to go, well I suppose, be cruel and rip guts. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please hit those like and subscribe buttons, and don't forget to share the video with your friends. If you want to see more pics of different models I've been working on, you can check out my Instagram account, and feel free to join our Facebook community using the links in the description. If you have any questions or feedback on the video or the channel, please leave a comment below, I do read them all. And if you have any suggestions on videos that you'd like to see in the future, please also leave that below. Stay safe, hope to see you again soon.